Greetings. My name is Kate Rademacher, and I'm delighted to be here with Writing for Your Life. We have an exciting conversation today. We're going to be talking to Writing for Your Life alum Marie Chan, who just had her book published yesterday. It's September 2024, and she's written an amazing children's book called Mamie Takes a Stand. And it's truly an incredible story, and an incredible, depiction of real life events, as I understand it. So I'm so delighted, Marie, to have you here, and thank you so much for your time. Maybe we can just start. If you can just tell us a little bit more about you and how you got into writing in the first place. Thank you. And my cat is here with us.
Wonderful. Yeah, I actually didn't think I was going to be a writer. It was actually, unfortunately, about 5 years ago, after the unexpected loss of my youngest son, that my friends and other people encouraged me to share my story and to write things down. And so that's how I got into writing. But one thing led to another. It was through reading actually another picture book biography about a different hidden figure that led me to research school integration cases in California that led me to write Mamie Takes a Stand. Um, for me, I'm a former California public school teacher, so Mamie Tape's story has a special place in my heart. I'm also an adoptive mom, and I care a lot about social emotional learning and uh, really amplifying adoptee voices and advocating for adoptees. And so I lead a trauma informed support group for adoptive and foster parents through my church. And I also teach at a co op. So, yeah, I wear lots of different hats besides just writing, but I care deeply about children and really want to see more representation and diverse books.
Well, thank you for that. And I'm so sorry about your son.
Well, I'm
So, with
grateful for writing for your life because that was one area when shortly after it happened that I could process some of that pain.
Well, tell us about Mamie Takes a Stand. It's really, as you said, it highlights and depicts a hidden figure, and someone I wasn't familiar with before I read your book, which is really gorgeous. So can you just tell us a little bit about Mamie Tape and the book, the premise of the book?
Yeah, my book released just recently, as you said, and here's the cover. And so in 1884, an 8-year-old Chinese American girl named Mamie Tape, she was denied entrance into her local public school in San Francisco. And this school was literally just a tenth of a mile away from her home. I actually walked the street from where her house was to the location of the school in San Francisco. And even though she was born in the United States, but her parents were immigrants from China, she was denied access to a public education. And so she and her family, they fought for her right to go to school. And her case, Tate v. Hurley, went all the way up to the California Supreme Court. So it's quite a significant case. In that court decision, they reaffirmed the right for children of all races to have access to a public education in California.
That's incredible. And you said a moment ago you didn't think of yourself as a writer or didn't think you'd be writing a book. Did you think of yourself as a historian? How did you find out about this, and how did you, sort of undertake the process of researching it, which sounds like it was quite comprehensive.
Yes, I think I just had a real personal interest because I didn't see my cultural heritage represented a lot on the shelves of my school library or public library growing up, or even in my history textbooks. And actually, at the start of the pandemic in 2020, it was reading a different book that my daughter had selected. She was in kindergarten at the time. It was Duncan Tonatia's book, Separate is Never Equal. And it's the case of Sylvia Mendez and Mendez et al. Versus Westminster et al. And it was through reading that children's book that I discovered that there were separate Mexican schools in California, which I didn't know. I was raised in Orange County, and this case took place in Orange County. And I had passed by the area where that case took place many times with my family to go eat at a restaurant down the street. And I never knew about this history from 1947, which later leads to um, the desegregation of all schools in California. I didn't realize that how widespread it was. And so it was through researching and wanting to learn more about that case that I stumbled upon, that rabbit trail of research to learn about the Tate v. Hurley case. And then it was like, oh my goodness, this is even more personal. And I just started researching all the archives. And I'm really thankful that God opened the door for me to contact the Tate family descendants and that they shared their photographs with me and also allowed me to interview them, and they shared more stories. And so that was just very helpful. And yeah, so that's kind of how I started researching for the book.
I mean, just your pursuit of that passion and interest. Are you trained as a historian? Did you have any of that in your official background, or what did you sort of learn as you go?
I learned as I went. I think being part of Writing for Your Life was helpful. One appointment I had during my first Writing for Your Life, it was a Christian children's book conference. This was in the fall of 2020. And I signed up for an appointment with Lisa Creighton, and she was so gracious and encouraging, and she has a lot of experience in writing children's book biographies. And so she gave me a lot of tips. And also during that conference, I met my writing coach, Helen Kimbrough. And so she helped me through the process as well. Also, I'm part of the Society of Children's Books Writers and Illustrators, and that year the Smithsonian had partnered with them for a nonfiction children's book writing conference. And so that was really helpful. But I'm really thankful there's like different people from the National Archives, other historians, professors of Asian American history that gave me resources and helped me.
Well, it really is a spectacular book. I hope that it is widely read because I do think it's a missing part of our history that we need to know more about. And, you talked about Mamie Tape's sort of success, so to speak, in the California State Supreme Court, but there were a lot of challenges, including even after that decision. Is that right? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I mean, I think this is what I've been seeing through studying different civil rights cases is that you can have certain victories, but then there's obstruction of justice in other ways. I mean, even if you look at the case of Linda Brown and Brown versus Board of Education in 1954, um, we many of us have heard the story of Ruby Bridges trying to integrate William Frantz Elementary School in New Orleans. That was in 1960. That was 6 years after Brown versus Board. So you see there's this gap between you have a court ruling and actual implementation of that law, and there's still pushback on that. And so with Mamie's case too, even though she won in the California Superior Court, and even after it was appealed to the California Supreme Court, um, unfortunately different school officials, government leaders found other loopholes to circumvent her from going to um, a school that was nearest her home by using legislation through the state assembly, and so passing a bill and actually looking through those archives. You know how hard it is to pass some bills sometimes, and it was interesting how quickly they passed that, and that's very disturbing to me, because it just I, yeah, it just shows just that we really do need to stand up for justice and fight and persevere for these rights.
Well, maybe we can look at a couple pages of the book itself. Maybe if you'd be willing to hold it up and show us. The illustrations are really, really wonderful. I thought, and maybe can you just talk about? I know we learned from our Writing for Your Life children's conferences that if you're a children's book writer, you shouldn't go out and find somebody to do the illustrations. You shouldn't ask your friend to do it. So presumably that was the case that was in this case, and so Did your publisher picked the illustrator, I'm assuming, and can you just talk about, did you work together at all, or was it, you did, was it sort of separate? Can you talk a little bit about that process? Because that's something people are often curious about.
Yeah, I mean, I know that often they tell children's book writers don't put too many art notes, but I actually included a lot of art notes, partly because not because I was trying to dictate the illustrator what to draw, because they're a lot more creative and gifted at that than I am, but it was more like it took me so long to dig through so many primary sources to find reference images or addresses, looking at historic maps, because San Francisco had a very big earthquake in 1906. The case was between 1884 and 1885. And so if you look through certain names of schools and places, things changed. And so you have to look at photos and be like, was that before 1906 or after? And things moved around a lot. They changed names. Just it was very confusing. And so just to save her a bit of time, I put a lot of reference images as much as I could. And my illustrator is wonderful because she has a degree in archaeology. So she was very, yeah, so she has a lot of kind of history background as well. But I think uh, it was really great too. She's also Chinese, and so she, I think, understood a lot of those cultural details. And so I just really like the bicultural aspects of some of the things she put, the different kind of um, Chinese vegetables here, and she put some of the Chinese
Mhm.
language here, and she really captured the emotion well. But yeah, sometimes she would ask me questions like, um, "What did this look like?" And so even though I had a lot of art notes, there were still some things that I hadn't thought about because I only had to write about it. I didn't have to draw, so it was like going back to the archives, looking through more research to try to answer her questions. But I love how she captured the emotions of Mamie, and I think she did a great job, yeah, on the illustrations.
Well, thank you for that. And that's so, fascinating, the process that you went through with her. You know, since we are, a lot of our listeners are writers and are interested in the writing process, are there other kind of lessons learned, or perhaps surprises you had along the way as you were working on this book and now moving into publication?
Yes. So I think one tip I would get if you are writing children's books is go back and look in the back matter as much as you can, because it's very interesting there's so many gems there, like in bibliographies, but also to see how other children's book writers structured their back matter. That was very helpful. Um, One thing that and this is the teacher side of me coming out, is that I've had students who've had dyslexia, and I'm really thankful. Even the interior design of the book, we were talking about, I said, certain kinds of interior design actually affects how accessible um, it is to readers who have dyslexia. And so even certain background colors, how they formatted the text actually made a difference. So I'm really thankful that they took that into consideration as well. But I think community is so important. And I think that's why writing for your life is so wonderful, because it's a long process, uh, and can take many years. And uh, you really need that encouraging community to help you persevere and keep going. And I think as a writer of color too, there are some really difficult topics and things that we're processing some really hard material. And so I think having that community to encourage you and ask questions really is helpful.
Well, thanks for that. And perhaps actually, just since you mentioned the back matter, that the phrase, you could just open your book and show it to us, because I read the advanced copy of the book and I was really impressed with the last several pages. And so maybe you can just hold it up and sort of explain for those who aren't familiar with that phrase, um, or concept, what you're referring to.
Yeah, I mean, there is just a lot of research, which is different from the way you would write the main text for a children's book that has certain spreads and page turns and pacing. And so there's more history here. And that's something that took a long time too, is to figure out the copyright permissions for photographs. We take it for granted, we just flip through it, but I really like how the designer kept it with the kind of scrapbook, like archival look. Uh, but yeah, and so here's the timeline. Um, One thing that took a long time, and people might just read this in 5 minutes, is the note on Chinese pronunciations. So being Chinese is not a monolith. There's many different dialects, and the Tate family names sometimes are transliterated into Hoisanhua or Toisanese and Cantonese. I included Mandarin Pinging just because that's more of the more popular and more well known, but actually I wanted to highlight these other dialects of Chinese because I think there's something about those heart languages and really or dialects and to kind of show that even that diversity there. And that took me a long time because depending on the generation of when certain Chinese groups came to America, your names were transliterated differently, and it's sometimes different from what's in modern spelling. So I had to go to like antique like Chinese dictionaries to parse through that, talk to the elderly generation that spoke some of those dialects to try to find what was the right spelling or transliteration of certain Chinese characters.
Wow, well, I just continue to be so impressed with the level of effort that you put into this. I think you deserve a PhD in history.
Well, it's funny. I mean, there wasn't that much space in the source notes to put all my full bibliography, but I have so many sources that I feel like it would have been enough to write like a doctoral dissertation.
Oh. Maybe that's what's next. You'll come back and you'll publish an academic book. Well, on that note, we talk a lot in Writing for Life about sort of platform building and the need for authors to do sort of their own publicity. And so tell me, and I again, I want this book to be in every classroom. Tell me kind of what you're doing, what your publisher is doing to help get the word out. I know it's early in its distribution, but can you just talk a little bit about the marketing plan?
Yeah, I'm really thankful for my marketing team at my publisher. They've been really supportive and giving me lots of ideas for marketing and also giving me other contacts and working together with different influencers, but also reviewers and people, and to send the book out to so that people could preview it and do advance, reviews. It's been really fun though to just reconnect with old friends too with the book coming out and um, educators and even some of my former students who are now old enough to do their own podcasts, and so I've done that, and that really delighted me because one of my former students said, "I saw myself represented in the pages of your book," and I that was just like music to my ears that like that she felt seen, and I have also had the opportunity to talk with some museums. So that's one thing that I'm really excited about is that Bowers Museum in Southern California has invited me to do a story time there in their Ancient Arts of China exhibit. And so after the story time, I'll be doing a lesson with the children on Chinese calligraphy. And that is really meaningful to me because I was really ashamed of speaking Chinese in public growing up and at school. And so I feel like this is just a wonderful opportunity now for me to actually celebrate my cultural heritage through sharing this book and in a public setting. So I'm really grateful for that. And yeah, and other opportunities to speak at book festivals and bookstores.
That's really great. Well, I want to recommend everyone get a copy because it's just really beautiful and I think um really important for us to be more aware of Asian American history, and Chinese American history in particular. So, I really think this is a gift you give into the world. Can you talk more? I know in your bio blurb on the release, is you use the word advocate, and I think we've been touching on it throughout the conversation of sort of the need to elevate underrepresented voices and underrepresented stories. But is there anything else you want to say about that, sort of how you see yourself as an advocate and kind of how you hope this book will be used is sort of with more of an advocacy lens?
Yes, I hope that when readers read this, that they will grow in empathy and respect. I don't think this is just for a book for Asian Americans, but really broadens everyone's perspective. And I'm hoping that it will increase cross-cultural awareness. One thing that I care a lot about is unity and solidarity. So towards the end of the book, one picture that I really love is the picture of Linda Brown, Ruby Bridges, Sylvia Mendez, and Mamie Tate, because I think it's really important that we see how all these civil rights cases are, these histories are very interwoven. They build on each other. And so I hope this will inspire people to really treat one another with compassion. It was really hard to research this during um, COVID when it was the height of anti Asian hate, and there was a lot of violent acts, especially committed against a lot of uh, the elderly in the Asian community. And it was ironic that I was reading stuff from the 1800s during the time of the 1882 Chinese Exclusion Act, and then reading newspaper articles from 2020 about blaming and scapegoating the Chinese, and it just seemed so similar. And it was almost like as if history was repeating for itself. And so I really hope this book and my work in advocacy is just really helping people welcome immigrants to our country, but also not be doing the same thing of history repeating itself, that we can really be more aware and understand, so that Asian Americans aren't seen as perpetual foreigners. Um, an additional thing that I have written, it almost was like writing a second book, is that I have an extensive 45-page parent and educator guide where I include archival photographs that the Tate family shared with me. Mrs. Tate, Mamie's mother, was a photographer, and there are photographs of San Francisco in the late 1800s that actually show more integration, cross-cultural integration in her photographs than other photographs of the Chinese at that time that were taken, that were made to look more like we were perpetual foreigners or kind of exotic. And so I think, again, I think having kids be able to access and see these primary sources, I think will help them have a more accurate lens of who Asian Americans are, immigrant families. And so I hope that knowing the truth will really help each person value, like, that each person has inherent worth because they're created in the image of God.
Well, thanks for that. And I really appreciate you holding up that photo with the different sort of, you know, heroes in this movement. I just visited the National Civil Rights Museum in
Mhm.
Memphis, and it was incredible, of course, and such a powerful, and it focuses on African American history. And I think one of the things I really appreciated your book again is helping to bring out the lens of school desegregation. Sorry, I'm stumbling on that word. Um, and the many populations that were affected by restrictive and racist policies. So again, I'm just grateful for your research and for your elevating this. Mamie Tape as an exemplar of justice work that happened.
Kate, may I also add how editors and literary agents have been advocates for me too? You asked about me being an advocate, but I think this is like a community effort. And so I really am grateful. It was through Writing for Your Life at that time. There was another conference called Publishing in Color. And so in the spring of 2021, that is through Publishing in Color, is through how I met my literary agent, Siobhan Bolden of Embolden Media Group. And she has been such an advocate for me. It's really hard to navigate the publishing industry and to know when should you advocate for yourself because you have some kind of unique stories from, you don't know, like, should I push for preserving this aspect of the cultural details of my story or not? And so I think like for her to be such an advocate for me was really helpful. I'm also really grateful for my editor. He is Asian American, and editors play such a big role in the revision of the manuscript. And I really appreciate how he understood the cultural nuances of my story, and that, like, him being able to have discussions with me about like just even the details of Chinese pronunciation really made a difference. Like he said, I know the intention why you included certain cultural details in this book. And so I really felt understood and seen in that whole editing process. And so I felt like they were advocates for me as well.
That's really amazing, on multiple levels. And for those who aren't familiar with Publishing in Color, I encourage you to check it out. Joyce Dinkins leads that group now. Well, let's, maybe we need to wrap up in a minute, but I'm wondering if you want to, I'm putting you on the spot, so it's okay if not, but if you want to read a couple of pages from the book, um, and then, maybe just wherever you want. Um, and then maybe you can tell us kind of where we can find out more about your work and you online. Um,
Yeah. So I'll just start with the beginning. I really wanted it to read like a narrative and not like an encyclopedia entry. So I was very intentional about putting symbols, having a story arc. And so there is this symbol of treasure and gold, and especially because of the gold rush and the history of the Chinese coming during that time, as well as in Chinese, the word for San Francisco is Gold Mountain. So I just wanted to weave all those throughout the book. So you can hear that too. Um, Let me see. Position so you guys can. Mamie Hunter Tate was born in the heart of Gold Mountain and searched for a treasure greater than gold. She found hints of it shining in her mother's handmade porcelain dishes and paintings of shimmering flowers and landscapes. She discovered glimmers of it in numbers and letters when she learned to read. Mamie wanted more. She wanted to go to school with the children in her neighborhood. But in 1884, Chinese children were not allowed to attend San Francisco public schools. So that's just the beginning. um,
well, thank you. Can you hold up the cover again for us too, just so we can see?
mhm.
Mamie Takes a Stand. And thank you. So where can we find you online?
Um, you can just go to my name, mariechan.com, and my book page, mariechan.com/books. That has all the links to where you can purchase, but also soon we were having some technical difficulties, but I'm putting up the digital download for that parent and educator resource guide. So I hope people can access that and use that. There's a lot of multisensory, cross-curricular, interdisciplinary, hands-on activities that I've included in there so that there's many different ways that children can learn the material.
Wonderful. Well, this really, truly, is an incredible book, and I hope it, as I mentioned, is um, widely purchased and distributed. Is there anything else that you want to share with us before we wrap up for the day?
I'm just so grateful for Writing for Your Life because this is where I feel like I learned so much and it was such a great support for my writing journey and to learn about the publishing industry. And so I'm really grateful for this community. And thank you so much for letting me share today.
Well, we're so grateful for you. You're teaching us and giving back a thousandfold. So congratulations on the publication of Mamie Takes a Stand, and please keep us posted on how things go. And if and when you get your PhD in history, let us know.
Thank you
So
so much.
blessings. Yeah, blessings on the book launch, and thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Take care.